We're back, and you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Susan Smith from Vistage, with my co-host, Jeff Mack from Newmark Love Knight Frank. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you now Jerry Lehocky, partner of Pond Lehocky Stern Giordano. I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name in the beginning. Jerry Lehocky.
Jerry Lehocky.
It's so nice to have you here. Welcome. Tell us about your firm. What is your specialty?
Our firm is a workers' compensation and Social Security disability practice. We represent people who are injured on the job and people who are seeking Social Security disability benefits. That's all we do.
How large or small is the firm?
We have 16 attorneys and 135 staff members.
When did you get started?
Yeah, when did you
We opened our doors July 1, 2010 with 5 attorneys and 23 staff members. And as you can imagine, we've grown tremendously over these nearly 3 years. And I think we've been told we're the fastest growing law firm, not only in Pennsylvania, but I think in the United States right now, for the kind of work that we do.
Jerry, why is that? Why is it the fastest growing? What's the reason behind it?
A lot of reasons behind that. Our relationships that we've developed, my partner Sam, Pond and I, and Dave Stern and Tom Giordano, the relationships that we've developed with attorneys who don't do workers' compensation and Social Security, the relationships that we've developed with doctors who send us work, the relationships that we've had or have with unions, and our clients, who are one of our biggest referral sources.
You mentioned the word relationships a couple of times. What does that mean in law? What does it mean in terms of trust in business, and how do you define it?
Well, you define it by the service that you provide and the trust that develops from providing good service and providing quality service, not only from the attorneys but from the staff members who on a day-to-day basis have to deal with our clients for the most part. You have to have your client trust you. You have to have your referral sources trust you to provide very good service for, it may be their patient, it may be their brother, their cousin, their mother, their father, it may be a close friend, it may be a fellow attorney. And when they send that referral to us, we want to make sure that they know that they're in good hands.
So what do you expect the growth to continue or to flatten, or?
I hope it continues. My expectation is that it will. We have plans to grow and continue to grow as long as the business comes in the front door.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your past. Where was it that you grew up?
I grew up in a town called Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, which is in Beaver County, northwest of Pittsburgh, about 25 miles up the Ohio River. Mm-hmm. It was and still is primarily a steel mill town. I worked in a steel mill in college to put myself through school. It's a blue-collar area.
What about siblings?
I have 2 brothers, an older brother who's 11 months older than I am, a younger brother who's 4 years younger than I am, and a younger sister who's 6 years younger than I am.
Okay, and so what did mom and dad do, and what were the lessons that you learned from them?
My father, when I was very little, had his own plumbing business, and he worked for Sears, installing toilets and hot water tanks.
Uh-huh.
And starting at age 7, I was in the van with him on Saturdays and Sundays, learning how to install hot water tanks and toilets and doing plumbing. My mother worked for J.C. Penney's for 30 years in the fine jewelry department, selling gold and diamonds. And, we were a middle-class family.
So you really saw the benefit of persistence and hard work, it sounds like.
I saw hard work firsthand.
Firsthand. What about, what happened in your childhood that may have led you to do the work that you do today?
Well, as we discussed earlier, I told you about my father's health problems.
Mm-hmm.
My father was diagnosed with lupus at a very young age, young adult age, at a time when most doctors in Pittsburgh couldn't diagnose what it was. Had no idea that a white man in his early 30s could contract and come up with lupus.
Mm-hmm.
he was ultimately transferred to Montefiore Hospital, New York, where he was diagnosed with lupus.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 10 years old. And I grew up with my father, who suffered from that illness that ultimately killed him at age 64. And between 44 and 64, as I said, he had 4 heart attacks, 3 different sets of triple bypass, and a lot of time spent in the hospital.
So you spent a lot of time with your father in hospitals, observing what was going on with his life.
No question. I spent a lot of time in hospitals observing not only what was going on with my father, but what was going on inside the hospital and how hospitals operated, how doctors dealt with patients, all of that. That experience.
It sounds like something hit you in the core from that. Can you tell us a little bit more
Well,
about that?
you can't, at least I think, as a human, you can't not be affected by that in some way, good or bad. It's going to affect you somehow. And for me, you don't really understand the impact of that effect until later on.
Mm-hmm.
I was far too young to really understand what was going on, but I remember every minute of it.
Because now you're really a champion for folks that have been disabled in some fashion.
I understand what disability can do to a person, what it can do to their family, what it can do to their friends and their neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And sometimes it's devastating. And if there's not a form of safety net, a form of benefit for that family, they're in trouble. They're in serious trouble on a lot of different levels.
Jerry, you mentioned that you didn't always think you were going to become an attorney. What were some of the aspirations that you had for your career?
My primary aspiration, other than ending up where I have ended up, was to be a soap opera actor.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Tell us what you were interested in.
Well, because of my age, I'm an old man, and when I was in college, General Hospital was literally, I think, the #1 rated television show, and it was a very popular soap opera. And Luke and Laura were probably the 2 most famous people in America, and I wanted to be Luke, and I wanted to be a soap opera actor. I thought that would be a great way to make a living.
You get the stage every once in a while, don't you?
I'm on the stage every day. I'm in court every morning, practically in front of a judge, in front of a public audience, so to speak. And I won't say I'm performing, but I'm working. I'm working on behalf of the client that's sitting next to me. So it is kind of like a stage, but it's not. It's not acting in any way whatsoever.
It's the real thing.
It's the real deal. I'm not reciting any scripted lines. Everything that I say comes from my heart and my head.
So, what happened? You were thinking that you were going to be somebody you'd see on TV, and instead you see you in court. So,
Well, like I'm sure 99.9% of everyone who wanted to be an actor growing up, it didn't happen for me. I decided to come to Philadelphia to go to law school, thinking that I would ultimately become an entertainment attorney. Because I thought, well, acting's not going to get me anywhere. It just wasn't going any. Aliquippa wasn't the place to really launch my acting career. So I came to Temple to go to law school, and in my second year, I was the research assistant for my contracts professor, a gentleman named Hansel Minyard. And at that time, he was asked by Mayor Good to become the city solicitor of Philadelphia. And he did. And he left Temple Law School to become the city solicitor. And he asked me if I wanted to go down to the city and work for the city legal department, which I did, because I was putting my way through law school and I needed the money. And Hansel got me the job in the workers' compensation department for the city solicitor's office.
So that was your first introduction to working with workmen's comp. Now, let's just bring it up to the present. I understand that you are the president-elect for the Pennsylvania Association for Justice.
I am,
So you'll become the president
this July.
this July. What's important to you about that?
Well, the Pennsylvania Association for Justice, which was formerly the Pennsylvania Trial Lawyers Association, is probably one of the most recognized and respected trial lawyer organizations in the country. It's made up of nearly 500 very dedicated trial lawyers who spend their lives representing victims of various injuries and various
What's important to you about
negligence
being
actions.
president?
What's important to me is that it is the culmination of being affiliated with that group, being on its board for over 20 years. It allows me to do something different than what I'm doing, and it provides a platform, to a greater platform